talk Texas football. So Texas football, it all starts with the head coach, Steve Sarkisian. So whatever you want to say about Steve Sarkisian, this guy does put up points offensively. He's a tremendous offensive mind. You can see that Nick Saban was a believer in him. He brought him into Alabama. That kind of really revived his career, kind of turned it back towards the right path. He even said, he came out with a statement. He said that coaching under Nick Saban, I learned what discipline and I truly learned what hard work was. So I think he's applied that at Texas. If you rewind to the start of the 2022 season after that narrow loss to Alabama, I think there was a lot of people almost more content with that loss than they were with a lot of Texas wins after the 2009 season, which is crazy to think that, Texas fans were almost more optimistic after a narrow loss to Alabama. Now, Texas went on to have an okay season, 8-5. The main thing, the main question, the burning question with Steve Sarkisian is can he win big at Texas? Sarkisian, like I said, he's a guy that can put up points. He shows he can recruit the skill position. They're gonna have some playmakers this year, especially not just recruit high school guys, but in the portal too. A.D. Mitchell comes over for Georgia. A.D. Mitchell, talented guy. I don't think his play strength is great. I think that's what is going to limit him from having a high upside. But you see, he can make contested catches. He's got some size. He's got fairly good hands. But to me, the burning question is Sarkisian. Can he win big at Texas? Can he make them a consistent conference champion and national title? I know that's what Texas fans are just burning for. It's like being a Michigan fan myself. That's what I was burning for. That's what I was burning for a long time. Just can we be a legit? Okay, obviously you want to be a national championship contender every year like Alabama. But that's just not really realistic expectations always. Other than Alabama, Georgia now, I guess Clemson a few years ago, but it's been a couple years. You can't really ask to be a consensus, or you can't ask to be a consistent national title contender every single year. That's not really. I feel like that's not really being a realistic fan. But what you can ask for, especially at a place like Texas and at Michigan, you can ask to be a consistent conference title contender. So Steve Sarkisian, can they break through this year? And what happens in week 2 against Alabama? Can they get a win there? I think that'll be an exciting game. It was a really fun game last year. You hope that Quinn Ewers would have stayed in that game. Maybe it might not have affected the outcome. Maybe Alabama still does get the win because Alabama really in the second half they played, I would say. Well, I mean, I guess you could argue it, but it seemed like Alabama was determined to find a way to win in that game, regardless of who was at quarterback for Texas. But yeah, it'll be a fun game this year in week 2. So talking about some of their players, Texas has Jonte Cook, the wide receiver. I'll say this I'll start with a concern I have with Cook, and then I'll get into all the positives with Cook's game. So I'll say this. I wish I would see more leaping ability in his game. It's a guy that really broke out in the spring game. I think that Cook is his burst, acceleration, ability to set up defensive backs and beat them and manipulate them with single and double move is off the chart. He's really good after the catch. Not necessarily like elite at like breaking tackles with strength, but just like elite or really good after the catch as far as turning on the jets and the acceleration, the overall long speed to just leave people in the dust. So those are all areas where Jonte Cook shines. I think he's a guy that's going to make an impact right away from Texas. I think they're going to have to find a way to get him on the field. I know Texas is deep at wide receiver, especially with A.D. Mitchell transferring there, like I touched on. You got Xavier Worthy, a legitimate playmaker, arguably the second best wide receiver in the country to Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. So, yeah, Texas, they got weapons. Whittington's a nice player. Running back, there could be a number of guys that step up. Losing Bijan Robinson definitely is they're not, and Roschon Johnson, you're not going to have as high-end play out of that position, most likely. But Texas always seems to, it seems like at least in the last few years, Texas has seemed to find a guy. So I'm sure they'll have a solid production there. The O-line, Texas O-line, it was okay last year. Sounds like Sarkisian's listening to press conference. It sounds like they have some guys that they like, and I like his philosophy with the offensive line. He just wants to get the best 5 guys out there. Don't just plug one guy into one position because that's the only position he's played. Get the best 5 offensive linemen out there, and that's been my philosophy. I like that's Sarkisian's philosophy. So the quarterback Quinn Ewers is going to be the guy. Ewers. I love watching Quinn Ewers play. I love his skill set. I love that he can throw from different arm angles. I think he's got a cannon. Sounds like he's changed his diet, changed his body. Sounds like he was a little disappointed with the way last year went. So this seems like a guy that's hungry to get better, and you got to love that as a Texas fan, that this guy has some drive in it. Because that was one question I had for Quinn Ewers. So obviously I don't know Quinn Ewers personally, but to me, a lot of guys that have had that much hype, that much success in high school football, sometimes they don't always have like that hunger and drive to be great. And it sounds like with the actions he's taken in the offseason, that maybe Quinn Ewers does have that drive to be great. So I'm excited to see what Quinn Ewers brings to the table in 2022. I like that Sarkisian. See, I like when they asked about, is it safe to say that Quinn Ewers is the guy, and then you got Arch Manning and forget the other quarterback's name, is the 2 and 3. And I like what Steve Sarkisian said, that Quinn Ewers, I would say that, Quinn Ewers is our guy, but every guy is working, competing, and it's not fair to just, pencil in one guy as a starter and kind of, not really go to another guy if they're playing well and deserving of getting on the field. So I really like the way that Sarkisian phrased that. But yeah, I mean, Quinn Ewers, no job is really safe in college football. You saw, Spencer Rattler, even though he was replaced by Caleb Williams, who Caleb Williams is better than him, no job should ever be safe really in this era of college football. And Quinn Ewers knows that. He knows who Arch Manning is. He knows the expectations of Texas football, and yeah, I think that's cool that he's hungry to play well, and what this Texas offense could be if they're clicking. The offensive line takes another step of improvement. They get a good running game. A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. I forgot to mention Jatavion Sanders at tight end. With all these guys, all these pieces clicking on offense, it's exciting to see what this could look like, and the sky really is the limit for this offense. But yeah, the defensive side. So they landed the top linebacker in the country, Anthony Hill. So I was scouting Anthony Hill a little bit. I wish, I have a lot of positives to say about Anthony Hill, but I want to get into a few of the concerns I have with Hill's game. So the first concern I have is he does not get off of block. You don't really see him get off of blocks as well as I want to. Can he do it? Yes, but I don't really see him necessarily do it at a high level. And I'll say this, but the positive with Anthony Cook, this guy that can blitz up the middle. He reads and reacts to screens so quickly, can read quarterbacks' eyes, sit, make interceptions, break on the ball in zone coverage. So you see why Anthony Hill, excuse me, was viewed as a 5-star linebacker coming out of high school, because he's got an excellent skill set that I think will translate well to the college level. But with some of the key traits lacking, it is concerning, and it made me kind of raise a question when I had that concern. The same thing with Jonte Cook. That maybe Texas all this time, even though they've been getting 4 or 5-star players, I think they have got guys that were 4 or 5-star guys, but maybe they've had kind of like, I've talked about this before, maybe they had a few key traits they weren't as good at a few key traits, and that's what's kind of held them back from becoming a true superstar. I think maybe that has been the problem with Texas. The other issue I've had with Texas, I know I talked about this in the last episode, is why can they not find more NFL caliber guys on the offense and defensive line? A couple of years ago they did have Samuel Cosmi. There is a guy once in a while, but it's just like, why is a school like the University of Texas, we're sitting in a state where that's rich in not only just offensive lineman talent, but talent overall, and they just cannot get O-line talent. And it was that is a huge question for Texas. And what's frustrating about Texas is they still, it seemed like forever until they found a quarterback. Finally, Sam Ehlinger was that guy. But yeah, Texas, a lot of recruiting whiffs. I mean, if you go back to Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin, who else? Johnny Manziel, a lot of whiffs as far as the quarterback position. It makes you wonder, what if they would have gotten Andrew Luck? I think it is an interesting question. But yeah, a lot of recruiting whiffs for Texas. Obviously, they've obviously hit big on some guys, especially in recent years. Bijan Robinson certainly was a hit. I mean, that guy is a freak. Xavier Worthy was a hit, but even Xavier Worthy, it seemed like at one time he was a lock to go to Michigan. He flipped because of an academic issue getting into the school. So, yeah, Texas, credit they did land him, but they did it with a little bit of luck. It was apparent that Xavier Worthy was going to be a Michigan Wolverine. So, but yeah, Texas, Alabama week 2, I think. If they win that game, I think I would be so if someone told me right now they win that game, I would be so curious to see how the rest of their season played out. You got to feel like if they win that game and then they have a season where they drop like 3 or 4 games and they just erase themselves from conference title contention and playoff contention, you got to believe that would be so frustrating as a Texas fan because you climb probably the highest hurdle early. And then you just stumble, then you stumble during the rest of the race. But yeah, we'll see how that game plays out. Obviously, that's a long ways away. We've still got fall camp, but yeah, I'm so excited to see how Quinn Ewers looks early. Touch on a couple other things for Texas. Tavondre Sweat, defensive tackle. He's one of the better defensive tackles. Should be in the mix as one of the top guys for the 2024 NFL draft if he chooses to declare so. They did land a corner in the transfer portal in Watts. Jalen Catalon, a transfer safety from Arkansas. Catalon, is a good player. He was a guy that's an interesting guy. I thought he was going to come out for the 2022 NFL draft, so I had watched his tape a couple years ago. This is a guy who I think is limited as an overall athlete, but he is a physical, hard-hitting player, and I think he will be a tone setter, and I think he'll certainly help out the Texas defense, even if he's not a true impact, game-changing type of guy. His overall ability will help the Texas defense. But yeah, Tavondre Sweat, they got another guy. I think they do lose Ovia Gofu in the portal, and then the linebacker they had last year, Overshone, who was an explosive athlete. So yeah, I mean, some pieces to fill. Do they have enough high-end level players on the defensive side of the ball? To be honest, I would say no. But you got to believe that Texas, with this offense, full go in the Big 12. The Big 12, you never know. You got to believe that Texas could still get it done and win a conference title with the pieces they have in place. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Brant Parshall Show. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.